Are you new to Amigurumi?
Are you wanting to crochet with soft and cozy plush yarns and looking for a one-piece project that is so cute?
Today we'll be sharing 5 Amigurumi crochet tips just for beginners that will help you create this easy peasy all-in-one lolly mermaid.
This pattern has so many variations that you can crochet dozens, and every one will be unique.
But the many options might be the very thing that becomes the deal breaker with this pattern.
Join us as we walk through this pattern. We point out the easiest options for starting, and we'll dissect potential problem areas that we came across and you could come across too.
And make sure you stay to the end. We have a special bonus section because this designer has created a bunch of modifications that are super cute. You're not gonna wanna miss. We're gonna take a deep dive into the world of Amigurumi with everyone's favorite mythical creature, the mermaid.
Today's deep dive is on the Mermaid Lolly pattern by Stitch Sister Co.
And we found this pattern on Etsy.
I bought this pattern originally because I made a big mermaid and she was amazing. However, she was a significant time investment, and I know that not everybody, especially at markets, can make a significant investment into a plushie. Really wanted something that was smaller and would be a quick make, and something that we could price a little bit lower so it's more accessible for everyday little, hey mom, look at that mermaid, I want it purchases.
Right.
It was really cute because I made these 2 so far that are mostly finished, and my 2-year-old saw them on the couch this morning and she took them and she was playing with them and she was just having the best time, and they were just talking to each other and it was so cute. And when I had to pack up to come here, I was like, Winter, hey, where did you put the mermaids? And they were in her little cardboard box car in their car seats. So she's trying to adopt them early.
I guess so. Tip number 1 is selecting your yarn and or combination of yarns and making sure you're using the correct hook size.
We've fallen into the pitfalls of hook size fiascos recently.
Many times. Even at the beginning, one of my first lovies, I just used too large of a crochet hook, not realizing. I think it looked fine when I was crocheting, but once I started putting the stuffing in, then that was when, I had the wrong crochet hook. So this pattern calls for a size 7mm crochet hook, and it also suggests that you use the bulky yarn size 6, which would be like a Bernay blanket. Mm-hmm. What other yarns?
The
basics.
Yeah, Premier Basic Chenille. The Parfait Chunky is a number 6, but honestly, when you look at Parfait Chunky next to Bernat Blanket, I don't understand how they could be in the same.
That's where I've gone off into the deep end of trouble.
Yeah.
And I've used size 7, and you can see all the stuffing. So I suggest 5.5 or 5mm at the largest.
Yeah, you can kind of see Mom made hers here with the Bernat Blanket. I think this was Chenille Home Slim.
Right. This was different. And I actually
all the thickers.
Really loved this velvety chenille for the skin because it's a little more shiny, and the blanket yarn is more matte looking, which is fine for the body. I think it's great, but I really like having this shinier velvetier texture on the skin. That's why I suggest mixing yarns, but then you kind of have to know what you're doing.
Right.
And then this is a sparkle blanket yarn.
Yeah, I made mine with Parfait Chunky. So I made mine with the 5.5mm crochet hook. And you can see how big the difference is.
Yes.
Like, it's exactly the same pattern. And mine is mini, and hers is like a bigger doll size.
Right. And this guy, girl, whatever, mermaid, I created with a 5.5mm crochet hook and several different yarns. This one has the skin as the Bernay blanket. The hair is actually the Parfait Chunky. And then this body is this new Hirschner's. It's called Cheerful Fleece Multis. And I ordered this on a Hirschner's order where I was getting my Parfait Chunky because Karen at Yarn and Whimsy, she had recommended these yarns and how beautiful and bright they were, and so I had to toss a couple of those on my order, and I haven't crocheted. I got this colorway is called Pool Party, which is perfect for a mermaid.
Yeah, that's a great tail.
And then this other color name is Tulips, and I was really torn which one I was going to use because this is also perfect coloring for having like a red-haired mermaid or orange-haired mermaid, and so these are really cute. But I do have some opinions about using variegated colors. We'll get to that later as we talk about some other details with the mermaid. So you can see this one's smaller primarily because I used, this is a 7mm and this is a 5.5mm, but this is a blanket yarn. So just the crochet hook made a huge difference in the size.
I mixed yarn with mine too. I really liked the Big Twist Posh Croissant color yarn for skin tone, and I didn't have any skin tones in Parfait Chunky, so I went ahead and used that, and I think that it's a really nice lighter skin tone.
Yeah, and those two yarns actually work really well together.
Yeah, they're about the same size.
They're so different to work with because the Posh is so much more slippery and the Parfait Chunky is a stickier yarn, but they're about the same size. They work up really nice together as a combination. If you can, I don't know if they're going to continue with that Big Twist Posh yarn or not, but I really like it. So
yeah, hopefully. And they had like, I think 2 browns, which was good for skin tones, which I feel like sometimes that's what colorways are lacking in a lot of companies' yarn color selections.
Right, or beigeier colors for plush animals and dolls. Tip number 2 is getting off to the right start in your construction. In a previous video, we talked about the multiple different ways that amigurumi projects can be constructed. And this beautiful little mermaid is constructed from the bottom up. So getting off to the right start means here's the tail, here's the fin. Choosing the correct fin and getting it attached to your tail.
And this pattern's awesome because there's no magic rings. Like, you know.
There is one.
Oh, I mean, if you start with, it depends on the tail you start with, but there's no magic ring. So if you don't like magic rings or any kind of that construction start-offs, this is a great pattern.
That's why I think that this pattern's great for seasoned crocheters because the whole pattern begins off of a chain and a foundation. And then that's very much more normal for people who've crocheted before. And then you're doing back loop side to side in this.
That tail specifically.
This tail. So there's 4 different tails. This is called the ribbed fin. Then we also have a lace fin. And before I go on, I mentioned before my hang up with variegateds, and I just don't prefer, although I made this one, to use variegateds with lace or intricate crochet stitches because you lose the beauty in the stitch because of the variegation. But it's a toy. I think that it's fine.
You can see I made the same one. You can see what it looks like in a solid color yarn instead of variegated.
Yeah, and I'm always a fan of any kind of really beautiful stitches sticking to solid so you can actually see the stitches. So we have the lace, and then we also have this one, and this one is called the seashell because it looks like a seashell ribbing.
Yep.
And then the last one that we have is called
petal.
Oh, the petal, because this looks like a flower petal or a leaf. So it's a petal, and it actually crocheted up just like I would make a petal. So that was appropriate. So which one of those fins did you feel was the easiest fin to start with?
I would definitely say that this shell fin was easiest to me.
Okay.
I haven't tried the one that you did there.
I think this one's the easiest.
I'm gonna bet that one's easier.
It's the ribbed fin.
The ribbed fin. Okay.
They're very similar because
I know. I was actually
the shaping.
I was just looking at mine. I'm like, did I screw this up because those are not the same?
I know. I think you thought that you had one of all of them. And
I did think I did.
But this ribbed fin is really just the opposite of that one, where it cuts up and back down.
Yeah.
And that one cuts
down
starting
and up.
Right. So, but the concept of building those tails is exactly the same.
Yep.
And this is the back. So this is how it would look on the front.
Yeah. And can I talk about what I think is the worst one or the hardest one?
Yes.
This petal fin,
Yes.
as much as I think it's the perfect quintessential mermaid fin, this is the bugger of the lot.
I crocheted an example of every fin because I think getting these mermaids off to the right start, there's various challenges with each of these fins. And I made the 2 petals. And I'm like, what do I do with this now? Because I didn't think the instructions were very clear.
Yeah, I didn't
They
either.
talked about the first petal and where to put your hook in to slip stitch it. But I never saw that there was a mention of the second petal. And I wasn't really sure if you were like crocheting across here. It said to make a stitch in, or if you were actually putting them together and making a single.
Yeah.
And crocheting into that.
Yeah.
I really wasn't clear. I know how I would do it to make it work, but that one was not clear. If you're a brand new beginner, the petal fin,
come back to that later.
Stay away from it till you've made a few. This is very easy to make the 2 fins. Very
Just
well
putting
constructed.
them together is what's tricky.
Right. So hooking them, and did you just kind of make it up here?
Yeah, I honestly don't even remember what I did because I was at the doctor's office, so I didn't have all my normal tools, and I was just kind of winging it. If you're an experienced crocheter and you sit down and maybe you make like 6 petals and then you put them all together, by the 3rd time, I'm sure it's easy.
Right. Now this little mermaid here, this fin is created with a starting magic ring. And you don't tighten your magic ring. You make your whole fin and you leave the magic ring a little bit open, because then when you start the tail, it's going to be started in the rest of that open magic ring. And then when you're done, you can tighten it up.
Parfait Chunky is so finicky with magic rings, so I made sure it was pretty tight at the beginning before I even went back and started my regular rows. But this is gonna need some good end sewing in here because I don't want it to go away.
And
fall apart.
So I would probably end up making a few stitches between the tail and the...
I plan to tie these 2 strings together also.
Yeah, and you could actually weave them up into the body out one spot, tie it, and then shove them in, and then you won't have a problem. And that's always a problem with the Parfait Chunky. And there are a few other yarns that are like that. And I struggled when I was making this mermaid with the hair, because I use the Parfait Chunky at the top, and I really had a hard time getting it all closed up because it's sticky. It didn't want to close for me, and I end up doing a lot more sewing to get it closed. And then I'm always pretty particular. We're not talking about the hair yet, but of sewing my hair kind of in place where I want it to be, so it's
not droopy
crazy.
Like that.
But you're not done with these
No,
yet.
I am not.
And the interesting thing about this, and it was a little bit tricky for me anyway, was once you have the fin made, then you have to decrease across the top. So you're making a decrease so that you only have 3 stitches left, and then you're left with something that looks like this. Then you're going to be creating your round part to move up the tail based on your front loops and your back loops. And then you're going to go around and around and around. it seems simple when I have my 3 decreases on the top, but as soon as I start working on crocheting and going, like it seems like the stitches disappear.
Yeah, those other loops disappear.
They do. It's really hard to see them. So what I recommend doing is putting a stitch marker in all of your stitches here. So now there's 3 stitches here on this front end, and then turn it around, and on the back loops there I'm going to put 3 stitch markers, because nothing's more frustrating than feeling like, okay, I know what I'm doing, I know what I'm supposed to do,
But
this
they're
is not hard
there anymore.
but you can't find them. So this really is helpful. Even if you've made a lot of amigurumi, those stitches disappear. So.
I will agree. And you can see once you start making the body, like this is where you join it, it's in the back loop, and you're supposed to do a cute little waist embellishment, but those loops are gone.
Right. The very first one that I made was this one, and I added that at the end, and it was tricky because those stitches do disappear. So that's one thing I would recommend, getting off to a good start. I do think that this is the easiest tail, and then I agree with Chelsea that this one is very similar. The construction's almost identical, and once you get the 3 stitches to close this up more at the top, doing the 6 stitch markers in the top would make this much easier. There is like a little ruffly fringe thing that goes on the bottom of this one. I didn't have.
Yeah, I haven't done that yet.
I didn't put that on. And then this is the example of the fin that's lacy, and here's the loop part that you attach 3 more stitches to get. And then the construction of the tail is identical here. You're going to put 3 stitches on the top of this loop, and then you're going to want to divide those out with the 6 stitch markers again. So the construction, while it's different, getting going on the tail is the same. And then with these 2 petals, somehow they get put together in like a 1 stitch thing that you are stitching 3 into, and then you have your 3 stitches, and then it's the same 6 stitches because you have your front loops, 3 front loops and 3 back loops.
My mom accidentally fastened off of this, which makes this slightly more difficult. Because the instructions are to do it from having this be your working yarn. But we're going to just attach where it would have started before. We're going to do that, and then we're going to slip stitch here someplace. This might be a good spot for adding a stitch marker when you're in the middle of making it. Then without turning, you're supposed to 3, we'll see how this looks.
So it's just, I don't know why it didn't seem clear to me in the pattern. Everything else I thought was really great in the pattern. There's lots of helpful hints and pictures and diagrams, and the pattern itself is very well laid out. So
Yeah,
this
there's lots of
very
pictures
first page has just the has just the fins.
Yep.
And you know, very organized with the layout to understand each part, and there's a pattern hack on here.
Yeah, I love the little hacks in between because I even used one for making a longer body. I'm gonna give her a top, so she just is a little bit longer because this is the standard pattern. Is less room.
And then she has a bunch of hair mods on here. I thought everything that she added on here was very, very good. I just that one tail I think is hard, but it's good to know that because it's a cute tail.
Right, yeah, it's the one I've sprung for first because it looks the most like the Little Mermaid.
Right. So if you're brand new to this pattern and you plan to make more than one, I would recommend starting with either the shell or what was the name of it? Ribbed fin. Then all of the tails get made the same way. So the tail is easy.
Tip number 3, we're talking about Mermaid's body. So when I made mine, I have made a couple so far, and I stuffed them and then got to the point where it said, hey, you should go and add your little mermaid ribbing around the waist like this. And I realized that after stuffing, my loops that you're supposed to crochet into.
Those front loops?
Yeah, the front loops, they're basically invisible. Like, I could come back through here and do it, but it would be very painful and time consuming. And I've done it on other patterns and I just don't enjoy it. So if you want to add a really pretty waistband feature to your mermaid, I would highly suggest doing it before you stuff your mermaid.
Right. I think I did mine at the end and it turned out, but it is kind of tricky when it's more stretched out. It doesn't give you the give. And I think also you were using the Parfait Chunky down here.
Yeah.
And that's a stickier yarn. So it is harder to get under a single stitch. Just with, it's hard to divide those stitches up.
And they have some really cute tweaks in the pattern for having really pretty ruffles too.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Because the front page is what I want. Here we go. In this pattern, the front page, there's a big ruffle, which I didn't make. There is also this like heart shaped, which is what I did with this gal.
Yeah.
It's kind of like just a sweet heart shaped top. Or there's just leave it plain.
Yep.
And that's what I chose to do on this one.
And that's what I've got on all mine so far.
I would really like to do the ruffle one.
Yeah, I do too.
I think I found what you had discovered is I waited till everything was finished, and then it was harder. I thought it was harder to.
It's just hard to maneuver your crochet hook when you're working with a stuffed side, in my opinion.
And you're going around this whole body.
Yeah.
If you're doing it before you get going with all this weight, because this is a lot of extra weight, and to navigate around with your hook, it would be a lot easier. So
yeah, if anybody has a hack on how to do this more easily, please share in the comments.
Right.
Because we would love to know it, because that's like one of those beginner amigurumi things that maybe we just don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Right. But it seems similar to us to just do the ruffle before you stuff the doll.
Exactly.
And you start stuffing before you even get to the head. So it's like right as you finish the arms.
Yep.
Tip number 4 is your arm construction. Now I have 2 examples for you because of the yarns that I chose and the crochet hooks that I chose to use. I had a really hard time following the suggestion on how to properly do the arms. My very first one, I didn't have a problem, and I love how her arms turned out. They are very straight and smooth, and you can move them, and they're not weird and wild, right? This gal, she's got
how you doing?
And no matter what I do, I'm not sure. I've never tried blocking plush yarn yet, but this shoulder is really weird also. It's like her shoulder's like this, and then this arm is like this, and so it's like, okay, so I didn't follow the instructions, and this is what happens if you do not follow the instructions.
Well, mine are curly, but in my opinion, in my brain, it says she's got her hands on her hips and she's got some attitude, so I wasn't worried about mine.
Yeah. I thought about making a starfish and having her hold something, and it would make me happier. But I know little kids would like to just play with the arms regardless. It's not a deal breaker for me, but so the suggestion in the pattern is as you're crocheting out and then working your way back towards the body for the arms is to work in the back loops of your chain. So you actually turn your chain.
Like the back bump of it, right?
The back bump. And it's almost impossible to see the back bump on these fluffy yarns. So if you aren't sure what I'm talking about, I'm actually gonna film a clip that I'm gonna put over the top here where you can see with a worsted weight yarn. You'll be able to see the back bumps better. And if you're actually crocheting into the back bumps, you end up with a much smoother.
Yeah, it's just prettier because it's the
so much nicer.
Those nice V loops on both sides of it then.
Right. And so I'm like, well, let's see what happens if I don't. And that's what I did on this gal, but it's so much nicer. I also have another hack because when I was making this little gal, the biggest reason that I decided to show you what it would look like by not doing that is because I was lazy. Didn't feel like getting up from my spot and switching my crochet hook. So another tip I would make, because I used a smaller crochet hook to make this one, is to make your initial chains out with a slightly larger, like a half a size larger. This is the Bernay blanket, and I was using a size 5, which is a small hook for Bernay blanket.
Or just chain looser too in the process of making your initial chain.
Right, chain looser. If you use a larger crochet hook, you might need to decrease a stitch. You know, go as far as you think the arms would look good, but then go back to your regular crochet hook to insert it into those back loops. And then it's easier. I couldn't get my crochet hook into those back loops. And then I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna do it. But there are, so those 2 hacks: crochet looser, use a larger hook to crochet the chain out, and then go back to your original hook size to come back in. And then just make sure that you're happy with the arm size. You might need to add a stitch or decrease a stitch for the arms. One other thing to note before you close up your doll is to make sure that you have put enough stuffing into the neck, because the hair is heavier and you don't want to have too floppy of a neck. So making sure that you get plenty of the fiber fill right in the neck area is really, really important. The good thing about this particular doll is the neck's not huge.
Right.
Also, the hair won't be as heavy because it's a tiny doll. So but making sure before you close it up.
Have enough stuffing up in the upper shoulders, in the middle between the things, and then in the head.
Tip number 5 is the hair and the several options that the pattern has for the hair. Option number 1 are these nice tight curls. And I made option number 1 with both of my mermaids. This one was made with the sparkle blanket yarn, and the hair on this one was made with parfait chunky yarn. And I love the curls. I love how this is exactly the way the designer designed the hair, and I think that there's enough hair to look really good.
Yeah. I like how full it is.
I do have a hack after you talk about your hair, but I chose on both of my dolls to have the curly hair. Now you made some different choices.
Yep, I did the same straight up regular hair with this doll, and I love it. I like how full those curly cues make her hair look.
I love that too.
So then my second one that I have here, I did one of the modifications that she has. She suggests a couple ways of modifying it to have longer or shorter or looser curls. And I think the only complaint I have about modifying to this one was that it's not quite as full coverage. Like there's a few more spots where you can see her head in the back. But I think it's still really pretty.
I think she does talk in the pattern though about making a few more extra strands of hair.
Because I did not read that intently.
Which I would personally do.
Yeah.
If you're going to make not the big curly curls, if you're going to make looser curls or the hair that's not super curly at all, I would go ahead and maybe make 2 strands of hair.
Or 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 for...
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
You can try it with 2 in each stitch or 2 in one stitch, 1 and alternate.
Yeah.
So then you're getting like 4 more strands of hair would make a big difference.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It also add time to this also. So just keep that in mind.
And the hair is time consuming. Out of this whole project, I think the hair takes the most time.
Yeah, it takes as long as making the whole body, I think.
Because it's a lot of extra stitches.
It's a lot of stitching.
Yeah. And then, okay, so we have those 2. One other modification is even less curls than this. And another idea that I have based on other mermaid patterns that we've had is to just construct the whole head just with the skin color. And then you can take several strands of yarn and tie those in.
Yes, make it like a wig with strands of yarn instead of crocheted hair.
I think that that's fun, but it can also be messier. I think that these curls will keep the doll's integrity longer.
Yeah, definitely, especially if the little kids are playing with it.
Right. So one of the hacks that I have for this hair is once you have everything finished, the head's constructed, but before you cut your end, leave a really long sewing end. And I have, you can't really see, but I've done a lot of sewing on the top of this head to keep my yarn in place so that the yarn just doesn't flop.
Yeah, you can see
like this.
It's a little floppy otherwise.
Right? So I want the hair to be away from the face, and then I kind of sew the hair. If you look back here, you can see some of the stitching there. I want the hair to cover that stitching so it looks like it's kind of parted.
Yeah.
Right? And then with this one, I actually crocheted just a simple little flower. It's not a part of the pattern. It's just, I know how to make a flower. And there's tons of tutorials.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure she has something about doing that in there.
She does have several different
sea star,
various accessories.
Yeah.
And I just didn't use one of those.
Yep.
I just made one that I knew how to make. And then I sewed it on here just to help with keeping the hair in place out of the eyes because I wanted the hair to be more permanent and not crazy. Not like the woolly mammoth.
I just woke up.
Right. So this hair to me is very fantastic hair. There is a reason why in her pattern that she doesn't recommend using safety eyes.
And it's because the intended audience is probably littles and
3 years old.
Right.
In that range.
Right. My daughter was in love it too. So
right? Exactly. So for the most part, we've been working on sewing eyes on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With mixed results.
Right. And I think that that's the thing with amigurumi. Most people are afraid to sew on eyes because they're afraid to make a mistake. And I did a tutorial on this mermaid with her eyes. I just randomly thought in my head how I thought her flecks in her eyes should look and did it. This particular mermaid, I decided I want to see what it would look like with the safety eyes. And she's going to end up with little eyelashes, but I agree it's important to make sure that these items, especially these particular items, because they're handheld, it's almost like little beanie babies. Now, you're always going for these very beautiful
Anime eyes.
Anime eyes, and they're tricky.
They're very tricky. This one, they're still, like, this one is not perfect by any stretch.
Right.
But it's fine. They still look like eyes.
And it didn't take away from the playability.
No, exactly.
Right? And then I really love these eyes.
Yeah, I made them bigger the second time. This was my second go at it.
Yeah.
And the bigger is better, for sure. So I was really lazy, and I used chenille yarn for these eyes. And I don't recommend using chenille yarn for eyes.
I don't know if you can see this.
But it's pretty sad looking.
Yeah. It really is.
Alright, so use not chenille yarn for eyes.
Use cotton or
acrylic
embroidery floss.
Yeah, I'm gonna try embroidery floss because I feel like I get not amazing results with other
acrylic yarn's fine, but it's fuzzier.
Yeah, it gets fuzzy really fast.
I bought white and black cotton yarn at Michael's just for eyes, but I also have embroidery thread.
Yeah, you pull it, like when you're sewing it through and you sew a bunch of times, it's already getting fuzzy by the time you're done with your eyes. So that's the only reason I don't love using that.
And some of these plush yarns, they just
fall apart.
They fall apart, so they're just not perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just me being lazy though.
And if you've made it this far into the video, you are in for a treat with the bonus section that we have. She also has an animal modification.
Yeah, you can. So this is a additional bonus pack purchase, basically. There are 6 animal add-ons.
Yes, and I think that it's such a great idea to have these little animal mermaids because it's just fun.
Yeah, they're so cute.
In our very last video, we were talking about heirlooms and how the Mama Made Mini Lovies are collectible and how kids just love those. Even bigger kids, they want to have a lot of them. And so little kids, like you saw your daughter, she had already adopted these too. When you have all these other options with these animals, they become collectible.
Totally.
And I just think that that is the sweetest thing, especially for people who are crocheting for their children or their grandchildren. Having a bunch where they can play imaginative play is just the best.
Definitely.
So what are you creating here, Chelsea?
So this is my bunny. So it's white, and I have one ear. I was hoping to make this for Easter, but Easter has now come and gone, and I still have this and this.
It was only 2 days ago.
It was 2 days ago.
I know, but still, you got time.
It's come and gone. So, yes, I know my children will still absolutely love this when it is done. But I'm making the bunny, and she's gonna be so cute. Like, honestly, she's almost done. I just need another ear, and I gotta make her face, and that's it.
Well, and there's a little fringe on the bottom of the tail, too.
I mean, but still, that's nothing compared to actually sewing everything else on.
Right.
Sewing the parts, which is not necessarily my favorite part.
Right. So there is a puppy. A kitty. A bear. A bunny. A cow. And this cow, if you make it yellow and put a spot or two, it actually looks like it could be a giraffe.
Oh yeah, or I thought deer too.
Or a deer, yep. And then there's a pig. And it's so cute in this picture. The bottom is pink, dark pink, and then the top is light pink. And I just think that they're super adorable.
We had so much fun making all of these mermaids. Kids just love them, and we love them.
I can't wait to make more.
They're so cute. Make sure you check out this other video that we made that's all about the construction techniques that you can find in the world of amigurumi crochet.
And you'll find that video right
here.
there. Woohoo!